The BBC is facing a leadership crisis after its Director General Tim Davie and News Chief Deborah Turnis resigned over the editing of a speech by US President Donald Trump. The public broadcaster has faced a storm of criticism for misleading editing of a speech Trump made on January 6, 2021, before a crowd of his supporters stormed the Capitol in Washington. Its Panorama documentary programme spliced together 3 quotes from 2 sections of the 2021 speech, delivered almost an hour apart, into what appeared to be one quote in which Trump urged supporters to march with him and fight like hell, the phrase he used towards the end of his speech, but without referencing the Capitol. Among the parts cut out was a section where Trump said he wanted supporters to demonstrate peacefully. In a letter to staff, Davie said, "There have been some mistakes made, and as Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility."
I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
Trump welcomed the resignations, commenting on his Truth Social network that the way the speech had been edited was an attempt to step on the scales of a presidential election. He called that a terrible thing for democracy.
The post by President Trump on Truth Social mentioned here contains the following sentence. "Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists." The British media outlet The Telegraph exposed this BBC falsification. You will now see The Telegraph's video explaining that falsification.
The BBC claims to be the pinnacle of impartial reporting, but what if there was an internal dossier that revealed that wasn't the case? The Telegraph has seen a letter that reveals one of the BBC's own independent advisers repeatedly warned that the broadcaster had serious and systemic problems. A week before the US election, BBC Panorama released a documentary called Trump, A Second Chance, and in it, they played the following clip.
"We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell."
But Trump didn't in fact say this at all. The BBC spliced together 2 clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
"We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you."
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
"We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women."
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
"We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell."
Now, it's true that a lot of people will still feel Trump's claims that in 2021 the election was stolen were entirely inappropriate and unbecoming of a figure in politics. But irrespective of your personal views on Trump, the question remains, how is a national broadcaster, funded by taxpayers on the premise that it will provide impartial reporting, allowed to splice together content in a way that one of its own advisers said materially misled viewers? And we're not even done yet. The footage Panorama showed of the Proud Boys marching towards the Capitol building, seemingly spurred on by Trump's rousing speech, well, that was actually taken before he'd even addressed the crowd. In fact, the BBC themselves later published a report at odds with Panorama's own timeline.
These are the Proud Boys, another right-wing militia, seen a little earlier that morning.
"Howdy, you boy!"
Donald Trump will not appear for another hour or so, but they're already heading towards the Capitol.
They even time-stamped the footage to show that the march began at 10:58 a.m, well before Trump's midday speech. The true chronology raises serious questions about the way in which the BBC decided to portray the events of January the 6th. In fact, the memo highlights that shortly after the first extract of Trump's speech, the now president actually said,
"I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard."
The BBC advisor who wrote this report claimed Panorama's editing was completely misleading, as Trump did not explicitly exhort supporters to go down and fight at Capitol Hill. They even pointed out that this was a key reason why he didn't face federal charges for incitement to riot. The BBC's Editorial Guidelines and Standards Committee member who wrote this memo raised all of these concerns, among others, with the BBC executive, but they were dismissed, ignored, and even accused of cherry-picking.
This channel released an interview with President Putin from late January this year, in early February. This is part of it.
Вот сейчас идет какая-то возня между европейскими политическими элитами и вновь избранным президентом Трампом. Что-то изменилось, что ли, со времен Байдена? Да ничего не изменилось. Они с удовольствием выполняли любой приказ со стороны Вашингтона при Байдене. Просто им Трамп не нравится, они с ним боролись активно, да? Реально вмешивались в политическую жизнь, предвыборный процесс в Соединенных Штатах, а потом растерялись, когда Трамп вдруг выиграл. И потом Байден ментально им больше нравился, понимаете, ментально. А у Трампа другие представления о том, что такое хорошо, что такое плохо, в том числе в этой гендерной политике, в некоторых других вопросах, им как бы не нравится это. Но я вас уверяю, Трамп с его характером, с его настойчивостью, он наведет там порядок довольно быстро. И все они, вот увидите, это произойдет быстро, скоро, все они встанут у ноги хозяина и будут нежно помахивать хвостиком. Все это станет...
Major media outlets fabricate stories, like this even about the US presidential election. Just imagine what kind of reporting they produce about Russia and President Putin, or Hungary and Prime Minister Orbán.